Well, this is Dr. Stan here at Radio Liberty, coming to you from the hills overlooking beautiful and picturesque Monterey Bay and bringing you the news behind the news, the story behind the story. Hoping to convince you that reality is usually scoffed at, that illusion is usually king. But in the battle for the survival of Christian civilization, it's going to be reality and not illusion or delusion that's going to determine what the future will bring. And I need to remind you the views expressed here are not necessarily those of the owners, management, staff, sponsors, or supporters of the station you're listening to. They happen to be my views, and for the next hour, certainly at this time on Friday every week, we have Dr. Dennis Cuddy, who certainly was with the Reagan administration working in the Department of Education. He's taught at the university level. He's been a consultant to industry. He's a prolific writer, and we carry all of the books he has that are in print at the current time. Dr. Dennis Cuddy, thank you so very much for being with us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me. The devil is very, very sneaky, and I've mentioned this before, but one of the tactics he uses is to make you feel everything's okay. You don't have to worry about anything, as Dr. Stan was saying. And therefore, what he does is he gives you a person who's very, very evil. Let's say, a Lenin or a Hitler or Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun, and they're very cruel, right? They beat you and they torture you and all this sort of stuff. And then what he does is he gets the people, whatever century it is, to see that as the evil. All right, now that's the evil. And so we need to watch out for that. However, then he does something very sneaky. He actually does the opposite, and that's how he really catches you. He gives you what you want. So while people are looking for some evil person to torture them as the evil one to watch out for, what people ought to be watching out for is those in government or the power elite, whoever they are, who give you what you want. What you want. It's sort of like the lesson that a parent gives a child who wants ice cream, and they say, "No, Johnny, don't eat the ice cream; it'll spoil your dinner," and so forth and so on. And sometimes, as a lesson to Johnny, they say, "Okay, Johnny, you keep after the ice cream. All right, here's a big old pile, and you eat all you want, and, the child gets sick or whatever." Because apparently it seems like some people only learn by, experiencing the problems that the parents are trying to help them avoid. And, they learn the lesson, unfortunately, the hard way. And so what happens today is, well, not just today, but any time, Nero. I've given Nero as an example 2,000 years ago. What did he do? He gave the people what they wanted. They wanted entertainment, and they wanted a sense of power. That's why he had the Roman Colosseum built, to give them circuses, he said, juggling acts and gladiators fighting in a sense of power by saying thumbs up or thumbs down as to whether the gladiators would die or not. So he gives them a sense of entertainment and power. And so today, rather than being a Hitlerian torturer, what the power elite does is say, well, let's keep them fat and happy. Give them a lot of food to make them fat and obese, and make them happy. Give them, ball games, sitcoms, soap operas, so forth and so on. Keep them happy, and through not torturing, but giving the people what they want, you can actually control them. And that's one of the things that George Orwell was warning about in 1984, when, yes, O'Brien was torturing Winston, but then when Winston succumbed to it and did what O'Brien wanted, he tortured him some more. And O'Brien's lesson to Winston was, we don't want you to submit to us out of fear and so on. We want you to come to love Big Brother. And so that's what they're doing today. They give you certain things that you want. I love my cell phone. I love my credit card. I love my computer. So it's not like, okay, people, we're going to knock your door down and come in there and grab you and, put a cattle prod on you or something. No. Give the people what they want. Give them a computer. Give them a cell phone. Give them a credit card. And through these things, they either control you by a threat to withdraw them later, or by finding out everything you do. Intercept the cell phone call, know what people are buying with their credit cards online, and so forth. So it's a control mechanism that's built not on torture, but on giving people what they want. And so that's one of the things that I don't think people understand today, because they've been trained to recognize evil as simply a evil, torturing, Hitlerian type. Even in the cartoons, the evil person in the cartoon is the villain, with a cloak, and he says, "Give me the deed to your ranch," or like that. The damsel in distress says, "Oh no, please," like that. And so we have in our mind this imprint of somebody like an agent of Satan or the devil as being an evil torturer. And therefore, a lot of people don't recognize that Satan often gets us in trouble by giving us what we want. People say in the 60s, "Yeah, man, I want some drugs." Okay, give them some drugs. Free love, sex and so on. Yeah, if it feels good, do it, was a slogan back then. And so it's not so much the evil torturer you have to watch out for, because that's obvious, but rather the very sneaky, sly individual or group or the paralite who manipulates us through giving us goodies. Give us the goodies, and then when you get the goodies, of course, you become dependent on the goodies. Whether it's the welfare state or whatever it is, you become dependent on it, and you come to love Big Brother. Okay, so anyway, that's the relevance to what my chapters in the book, The Paralite, Their History and Future, which are called The Use of Misdirection, and especially the one that we've already covered, the psychological conditioning of people. And I was giving the last time I was on the chapter called Oklahoma City Bombing Anniversary. And this is an example of how the public is told one thing, and so they think, okay, well, I understand it, and, the Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, and that was it, and the truck bomb, and that's that. But as I was talking about last time, I can't really prove that the Oklahoma City bombing was part of the secret Nazi plan about which I've written. However, you need to understand how the world works. It's like Zbigniew Brzezinski said, it's a grand chessboard. And it's been that way for many, many years, and the chess pieces are moved around. And the CIA, for example, their covert operations in the part of the world around Pakistan often will run through Pakistani intelligence, the ISI. And of interest, perhaps relevant to the secret Nazi plan, is that Germany was a key in helping Pakistan to get atomic weapons. And there's even a general who's today, he's a somewhat respected advisor. I think his name is McInerney. And he appears on various talk shows with for example, Sean Hannity. And Sean Hannity will be asking him, "What do you think about this plane in Malaysia? And, it looks like it went out into the Indian Ocean," and so on and so on. But this general is saying, well, he's very suspicious, and he went through the various reasons as to how perhaps, since one of the pilots of the plane was a real devotee of a strong Muslim Brotherhood leader, that perhaps one of those pilots took the plane, and the way he had his configurations and his analysis had it actually going near Pakistan, and who knows, for what purposes. So anyway, he was talking about the ISI and the Muslim Brotherhood, which of course would make it relevant to the secret Nazi plan in this book that I have, The Paralite, Their History and Future. And so, once again, it's the massive nature of the secret Nazi plan. It's not just, well, we're some high-level people and we got to find out an escape route. I want to reiterate that between 200,000 and 300,000 second and third level Nazis went underground in Germany alone during World War II. And they would be important in carrying out the secret Nazi plan for world control, as well as a lesser number, but dispersing far and wide in two successive countries would be the sort of high-level Nazis, the SS type. And they would go to all over. They would go to Spain and Iran. Iran was very important. Egypt was very important. Turkey is very important, and so on. Now, the anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing is coming up. It was the actual month and date was April 19th, and so that date will be coming up. And on the BBC show, which was called Conspiracy File, just a few years ago, on the show of March 4th, 2007, it contained some speculation about the instigator of the bombing, and his name was Andreas Strassmeyer, that he had ties to U.S. and German intelligence, is what they were saying on Conspiracy Files. Strassmeyer had ties to, for sure, to U.S. and German intelligence, and he had served in the German army in the area of intelligence, including disinformation, which I thought was very interesting. And his father as well, whose name was Gunther.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in just a moment here with Dr. Cuddy. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and the name Andreas Strassmeyer is certainly a name out of the past, so that you sort of forget all these names of people associated with past conspiracies, the Oklahoma City bombing, because there's always something new coming up. Yes, I remember Strassmeyer, and of course he eventually left. In fact, I remember certainly Ambrose Evans Pritchard, in one of his articles, talked about talking to Strassmeyer after Strassmeyer had gone back to Germany, and Pritchard said to Strassmeyer, "Why don't you tell the American people the truth?" And certainly Strassmeyer's remark, the American people couldn't accept the truth. I don't know if you remember that or not, but go ahead.
Yeah, and what people think is, well, okay, he was this German guy, and he came over to Elohim City, and that was it. But you have to look at the background and the connection. For example, Strassmeyer had served in the German army, and it was in the area of intelligence, including disinformation, which is very important regarding Oklahoma City. And his father, whose name was Gunther, he was a member of the Hitler Youth Movement, and Andreas's grandfather was a founding member of the Nazi Party, and chief of staff to German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. In addition, Gunther, the father, Strassmeyer, was the father of what we call the German reunification movement. And German reunification would also play an important part in carrying out the secret Nazi plan and the furtherance of NATO and the European Union and so forth. Germany is the leading nation in the EU today. And now there's a fellow named Vincent Petrusky, and this fellow helped Andreas Strassmeyer get into the U.S., and Andreas referred to him, Vincent Petrusky, as, quote, a former CIA, OSS, previously, guy my father had known. It was in Berlin during World War II. So you have Strassmeyer himself talking in those terms, and Petrusky had been an Air Force intelligence officer in the days of Vietnam in the 1960s, and in the counterintelligence division in Washington, D.C. in the 1970s. So he had all the right buttons he could push in this thing. And he introduced Andreas to a fellow from Black Mountain, North Carolina, that's the state I'm from, whose name was attorney Kirk Lyons. And Kirk Lyons' grandfather was also a founding member of the Nazi Party. So these people just seem to sort of appear, but when you start looking at their backgrounds, you start getting a sense of how all of this may be part of this secret Nazi plan, which is coming about today. Now, after Andreas's Strassmeyer's discharge from the German army when he was about 27, what he did was he flew to Washington, D.C., and that was on April 7th, 1989. And that was about the same time that Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh returned from Germany after his 2-week what's called a change-up program. It was an active duty assignment with the German Army. All right, so here you have Timothy McVeigh on an active duty assignment with the German Army. And also about that same time, McVeigh was assigned to Fort Bragg. That's also a fort in North Carolina, down around the Fayetteville area.
Hold that thought, Dennis. Hold that thought. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, Dr. Cuddy is suddenly taking us back to the Oklahoma City bombing, bringing up a lot of suddenly names from the past we tend to forget. Suddenly Timothy McVeigh, of course, the man who was accused of and convicted of being responsible for the bombing, acting alone. And, of course, that was simply a cover. He was simply the cover for the fact that this was an organized effort, some sort of intelligence operation. But, of course, the fact that Timothy McVeigh had been assigned at one time to Germany. And the Germans play an important part in this. The Nazi movement is still intact. As you know, Adolf Hitler escaped. Thousands, tens of thousands, probably 10 to 30,000 Nazis escaped to South America. Other Nazis certainly went to Egypt. They went to Iran, all over. Several 100,000 Nazis went underground in Germany. And so it was so interesting that Timothy McVeigh, shortly before Oklahoma City, when he was in the American military, was suddenly assigned to Germany and took a trip over there. Was he in contact with German intelligence? We really don't know. But one of the most interesting and intriguing questions is, what happened to Timothy McVeigh's body after he died? What happened to Timothy McVeigh's body? And nobody knows where it is. Suddenly, we recently saw some pictures, television pictures of William Cooper. He used to do talk radio like I do. And certainly after the Oklahoma City bombing, after Timothy McVeigh had been executed, suddenly William Cooper had a woman on his program, and that woman had actually witnessed the execution of Timothy McVeigh. And basically she said, I didn't know that you continued breathing after you'd been executed, after you were dead. And because William Cooper played that clip on his program day after day after day. I didn't know that you continued breathing after you were dead, until, of course, they sent a SWAT team out and they killed William Cooper. And you can look it up on the internet. If this sort of thing really does happen, and, of course, where is Timothy McVeigh's body? Well, they've got all sorts of reasons for never showing it to anybody. Go right ahead, Dr. Cuddy.
It was taken to an undisclosed location. Probably wound up right next to Osama bin Laden. In a protected area or whatever. So anyway, the thing is, if you look at McVeigh, you say, okay, there's McVeigh, okay, he was in the Army, all right, he went to some rallies here and there, and so on and so on. But when you start seeing the interconnections, it's sort of like a Perry Mason mystery novel. People, different people may look separate in their activities. But when you find out that all of them sort of connected at the same date in a specific town in a rural area of Iowa or something, you smell, something's going on when something like that happens. And so when you see Timothy McVeigh go over to the 2-week change-up program, an active duty assignment with the German Army, he's involved in that. And then you see that McVeigh was assigned to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where also double agent Major Ali Mohammed, remember him back there in the day? He had worked with the CIA and the Egyptian Islamic Jihad and trained members of Al Qaeda. That's where he was located. And in the town that I am, in the middle of North Carolina, if you look at Steve Emerson's map, you see that this is a locale where I am, where Islamic Jihad had its sort of headquarters or a training group in this particular area. And so the Islamic Jihad, you don't hear too much about them, but it's an Egyptian group, and they were, part of this whole effort. Major Ali Mohammed, a double agent, worked for them, although he's pretending, to work with our Army and the CIA and so forth. Now, McVeigh told McVeigh's sister, in a letter that he was one of 10 selected out of 400 to be a member of what they call a Special Forces secret team. He said to, quote, work for the government on the domestic as well as international front, end quote. And that included, quote, helping the CIA fly drugs into the U.S. to fund many covert operations, end quote. And so that tale's been going on for a long time. It goes back to Vietnam and so forth. And investigator Bob Fletcher on this very program, the same program we're on now, on Radio Liberty, March 20th, a couple of years ago, 2012, he related that CIA operative Gary Best had supplied the Contras in Nicaragua with timing instruments that blew up C4 explosives. You know, Iran-Contra was a drug money for weapons deal, remember that, and was training mercenaries in Azerbaijan, which actually borders Iran, in the 1990s. And then Fletcher then revealed that just 3 months before the Oklahoma City bombing, Best, that's the man Best, bought a meat company only 1.5 miles from the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, and ceremonially, on the first anniversary of the bombing of that building, filed company bankruptcy papers.
Hold that thought. Okay, Dennis, go right ahead.
Okay, so what you have is a nexus of all of these people. You've got Strassmeyer, you have Timothy McVeigh, you have Major Ali Mohammed, and so on. And so what you find is that they're spreading all over, and it becomes more and more clear how this can be part of the secret Nazi plan. And as I mentioned, Mr. Fletcher, Bob Fletcher, talked about this one particular individual owning, the last name was Best, a meat company only 1.5 miles from the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, Oklahoma City, which was blown up. And I just think there comes a point when you have to say, well, this is just too much to be just coincidental. McVeigh also wrote to his sister saying, quote, "We would be government-paid assassins," end quote. So this is just, him saying, yes, we're secret agents for the government. He's actually saying we would be government-paid assassins. And he wrote that letter on October 20th, 1993. That was about a week after he and Terry Nichols drove from Fayetteville, Arkansas, to LOM City, Oklahoma, to meet, specifically, Andreas Strassmeyer. So that's why they were going there, to meet Andreas Strassmeyer. Now, the founder of LOM City, his name was Robert Millar, M-I-L-L-A-R, quote, there's a quote more about him, was in regular contact with the FBI in the years before the bombing, the Oklahoma City bombing. That's according to June 31, 1997 testimony by a senior FBI agent, Peter Rickel, R-I-C-K-E-L. And another informant at LOM City was Peter Langan, L-E-N-G-A-N, and he was the leader of the Aryan, A-R-Y-A-N, Republican Army, and son of a retired U.S. Marine intelligence officer. So once again, you have this sort of intelligence connection. Now, the attorney I mentioned from the state where I am, Kirk Lyon, he had introduced Strassmeyer to LOM City, and informant Carol Howe, H-O-W-E, sent to her BATF, means the Bureau of Alcohol.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, this is Dr. Stan. Dr. Cuddy's bringing up a lot of things from the past. That's things most people have forgotten about the Oklahoma City bombing, and certainly the strange death of Timothy McVeigh, the fact that at least he was executed, but nobody knows where the body is. One of the people who witnessed the execution said over and over again, actually on a radio program, "I didn't know you continued breathing after you were dead." And William Cooper played that statement over and over on his radio program till they sent a SWAT team out and killed William Cooper. And you can check all these things on the internet. And certainly Dr. Cuddy is bringing up a lot of things that had happened a long time ago. We actually have a wonderful 4-CD set on the Oklahoma City bombing. That's the 4-CD set on the Oklahoma City bombing. And basically, of course, you can go back and get all of these thoughts and concepts refreshed in your mind. And certainly, who was Andreas Strassmeyer? Why, he was an agent of German intelligence who almost, it would appear to be, have been working very, very closely with Timothy McVeigh. And actually, we do at one time have the article, and we quote that in one of our newsletters, where Ambrose Evans Pritchard. And if you don't read Ambrose Evans Pritchard, you should. Every time I see his name, I read his articles. We interviewed him a number of times when he was here in the United States. And apparently the British intelligence agencies called his employer, the London Telegraph, and said, "Pull that man out of the United States." And so he's back over in London now, writing for the Telegraph. But his articles are always fascinating. But certainly, he actually called Strassmeyer, and he tells about the conversation. Strassmeyer, the German intelligence agent, working now, he's returned to Germany. Pritchard calls him on the telephone and says, suddenly, Strassmeyer, why don't you tell the truth about what really happened in Oklahoma City? And Strassmeyer said, the American people couldn't accept the truth. The American people couldn't accept the truth, and we have the article, we had it. I'm sure we still have it on file someplace. This is the sort of thing that goes on. Pritchard is still writing. Always read his articles if you have a chance, and pretty soon you'll begin to realize who you can trust. I don't know whether Pritchard understands the conspiracy, but he was a wonderful, wonderful reporter, and very, very important in helping us to understand that we did not get the truth about the Oklahoma City bombing, or very seldom get the truth about anything really going on today. We're certainly not getting the truth about what's happening over in the Ukraine. This is all staged, ladies and gentlemen. It's all staged in preparation for something big that's coming down the line. Go ahead, Dr. Cuddy.
Right, and we're not getting the truth about the Malaysian airplane either. There's a lot. In fact, these guests that Sean Hannity had on would say things like, we know, he knows some other facts that cannot be let out at this time. And so there is something in the works, and it's usually that way with apparently manipulating events. And in this case of the Oklahoma City bombing, attorney, as I said, Kirk Lyons, had introduced Strassmeyer to Elohim City, and also to informant Carol Howe there, and they sent to her this agent. There's a BATF agent, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms agent or officer, Angela Finley. She sent her 70 reports, 70 reports, within which she indicated, this is how, indicated Strassmeyer and others plan to blow up federal office buildings, which would include the Murrah building. So here we have 70 reports saying they intend to blow up this building. Now, 2 days after the bombing, Howe reminded the FBI that Strassmeyer had, quote, discussed assassinations, bombings, and mass shootings. This was in a November 29th, 1994 BATF report by Howe's superior, that woman I mentioned, Angela Finley. Now, despite this, and despite the fact that the FBI interviewed over 20,000 witnesses regarding the bombing, Oklahoma City bombing, the FBI never interviewed Strassmeyer before he left the U.S. in January of 1996, and for months before that date, he fled the U.S., stayed with Kirk Lyons in Black Mountain, North Carolina. So once again, you have these people connecting and interconnecting with the various suspicious elements, and all having sort of a secret Nazi plan flavor to the thing. Now, as Dr. Stan mentioned, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, in his book called The Secret Life of Bill Clinton, The Unreported Stories, that was published back in 1997, he judged in that book that Strassmeyer, quote, was being protected by the Bureau, the FBI. And relevant to that, ABC's program, 2020 is the name of their program, their segment on Carol Howe, which aired February 5, 1997, that that segment was pulled at the last minute. And when assistant producer, retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel Roger Charles saw it was never going to be aired, he protested, and he was fired. He was just fired for that, for just protesting that they weren't going to use that information, that story. And he then told Evans Pritchard that a message from this was, quote, that this story would bring the country down, whatever that's supposed to mean, end quote. And so Dr. Stan, in his recounting of what Ambrose Evans Pritchard was about, is right on target there. And in the late spring of 1996, Evans Pritchard had a series of conversations with Strassmeyer. It wasn't just one meeting, a chance meeting. He had a whole series of conversations with Strassmeyer, who was in Germany at the time, in which the latter, Strassmeyer, seemed to indicate that he worked for the American federal government, but he wouldn't, specifically say for whom. And then when Evans Pritchard asked Strassmeyer why he didn't come forward and tell the whole story, the latter seemed to indicate he would be considered, quote, a provocateur who talked and manipulated others into the bombing. And so that was another reason why Strassmeyer gave that he, just can't come forward and tell what everything he knew. Now, there is a relatively, within the last couple of years or so, a relatively new documentary regarding Oklahoma City bombing called A Noble Lie, N-O-B-L-E, A Noble Lie. And that covers some of the information contained in my essay here in this book, The Parallel to History and Future, as well as evidence from seismic readings and witnesses' testimony that the Murrah building was severely damaged by more than a truck bomb of ammonium nitrate and fuel oil. They call that an ANFO, A-N-F-O bomb. And a report using the Eglin Air Force Base, Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T, laboratory test results regarding structural damage and so forth, that indicated that the truck bomb explosion could not have been an ANFO bomb, as we've all been told. And the report was titled, quote, Case Study Relating Blast Effects Test to the Event of April 19th, 1995, Alfred P. Murrah Building, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, sort of a long title. And it was written by a demolition expert named John Culvertson. And he concluded that, quote, due to these conditions relating to the efficiency of air blast in destroying reinforced concrete columns, that's what the conditions mean. Due to these conditions, it is impossible to ascribe the damage that occurred on April 19th, 1995, to a single truck bomb containing 4,800 pounds of ANFO. It stands for ammonium nitrate fuel oil mixture. And it must be concluded, therefore, I think, that the damage to the Murrah building, Murrah Federal Building, is not the result of a truck bomb itself, but rather due to other factors such as locally placed charges within the building itself.
In fact, I interviewed people who were actually in the building at the time, and they described the initial blast, and they dived under their desks, and then the major blast went off, about 10, 20 seconds later, and that was the one, of course, that took out the building. And so basically the outside bomb went off first, and then the major bomb went off after that. But the American people were never to understand that anymore. They were to understand what happened on September 11th, 2001. But all you need to do is watch Building 7 come down. It was the hardest thing for me personally to accept the fact that this was controlled demolition. In fact, I had to watch at least 10 times Building 7 come down. And of course, first of all, nobody ever asked why did they have all the cameras focused on Building 7 at that time of the afternoon. Certainly the building came down in 6 seconds. There was no time to set the cameras up. So they were all set up waiting to take the pictures. But when you see the pictures, you'll see how the center of the roof collapses first. And that's because they take out the central supports of the building so the walls will fall in. And then once you've taken out the central supports, why then you take out the base of the building and it simply collapses, a controlled demolition. Watch it happen, you'll see it. And then, of course, if you watch the South Tower come down, you see how the top of the building vaporizes before the rest of it begins to collapse. Go right ahead, Dennis.
And many questions regarding the Twin Towers and Building 7, and in this case, many questions regarding Oklahoma City bombing still have gone unanswered, as well as questions I pose about 9/11. For example, why would Strassmeyer, if he was simply on an intelligence mission for Germany, why would he become then a bombing provocateur? That's something you have to look into. And then Evans Pritchard believes Strassmeyer was a, quote, shared asset, end quote. That would be working both for German intelligence and, quote, on loan to the U.S. government, close quote. Perhaps the domestic services section of the CIA, which under usual procedures would pass Strassmeyer's report to, quote, to the CIA's Directorate of Operations, end quote. Now, remember that in my book, The Paralete and the Secret Nazi Plan, I explained there how Alan Dulles of the OSS and CIA, after that, during and after World War II, worked with important Nazis, such as General Reinhard Gehlen, Gehlen, is a German military intelligence officer, and his organization, named the Gehlen Organization. And as I said before, I can't prove the Oklahoma City bombing was part of the secret Nazi plan, which is being fulfilled today. However, the bombing, along with the 9/11 attacks, along with economic crises, along with Middle Eastern and North African revolutions, I think you could possibly consider that as part or helping in the plan of the Paralete, their secret Nazi plan, and then ultimately their Paraland, as I explained it in the latest book, the Paralete, their history and future. Now, a final question that perhaps will never really be answered satisfactorily is whether Timothy McVeigh was really executed by the government. If he was, actually a government agent, perhaps. The official story was that he was executed. However, if you look at the video clip that Dr. Stan has seen, you will see and hear Susan Carlson, Carlson. She's of a TV station, WLS in Chicago. And you'll see her, or hear her and see her, saying about the execution of McVeigh, quote, "The shallow breathing continued, or what appeared to be shallow breathing, even after they pronounced him dead," end quote. Now, while you're reflecting on that, remember that dead people, they just don't, they don't breathe, and their chest does not go up and down at all. And so that's the conclusion of that particular chapter in the book. And it will be succeeded by a chapter called A Bold New World and Forces Too Powerful. Those are two terms which will come up within the book. Bold New World, and the second term, Forces Too Powerful. And at the first of this chapter, I indicate that William, I guess you pronounce it Noke, K-N-O-K-E, or Noke, was a founder and president of a Harvard Capital Group, something called the Harvard Capital Group, which advises, global corporations. That's his job. And in his book, Bold New World, The Essential Roadmap to the 21st Century, and that was published in 1996, Noke, K-N-O-K-E, he projects that, quote, "In the 21st century, we will each retain our indigenous cultures, our unique blend of tribal affiliations, yet our passion for the large nation-state for which our ancestors fought with their blood will dwindle to the same emotional consequences of a county or a province today. And a new spirit of global citizenship will evolve in its place, and with it the ascendancy of global governance," end quote. So these people, if you know who to look for and watch what they say and piece the puzzle parts together, you can get a pretty good idea of what the plan is and how it's coming to fulfillment. Pretty much all around us. Now, Noke, as I mentioned at the beginning of this chapter, K-N-O-K-E, Noke's vision is not actually new. It was that's noted by Fabian and historian Arnold Toynbee, who I actually corresponded some with, or just a little bit, back in 1963. Now, in the paper from June 1931, published as a paper but delivered as a speech, 1931, this individual, historian Arnold Toynbee, who was a member of the Association of Helpers under Cecil Rhodes' secret society, the Society of the Elect, in this particular document or speech, June 1931, he reveals, actually remarked, quote, "A local state may lose its sovereignty without losing those familiar features which endear it to the local patriot. Such features, I mean," this is him talking, this is he talking, "such features, I mean, as the local vernacular language and folklore and costume and the local monuments of the historical past. But if we are frank with ourselves, we shall admit that we are engaged on a deliberate and sustained and concentrated effort to impose limitations upon the sovereignty and the independence of the sovereign independent states. That means nations. The dragon of local sovereignty can still use its its teeth and claws when it is brought to bay. Nevertheless, I believe, this is the writer, I believe that the monster is doomed to perish by our sword. The 50 or 60 local states of the world will no doubt survive as administrative conveniences, but sooner or later sovereignty will depart from them, end quote.
And of course, the whole idea is a one-world government,
right,
a one-world financial system, and certainly a one-world religion with the destruction of Christianity and of national sovereignty. But they tried to do something like this, certainly under Nimrod, and of course God intervened and certainly got people to speak different languages and separated the people. These people tend to counter certainly God's plan for humanity. Our guest is Dr. Dennis Cuddy. You really need to get his books, The Power Elite, certainly, and their history and their future, The Power Elite and the Secret Nazi Plan. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, Dennis, you've got 3 minutes to wrap up the program.
Okay. Well, as I said back at the beginning of the program, this information isn't just there to provide entertainment. You, the listener, I would hope are using these things to alert people to how Big Brother tries to control us. And we've given, or I've given, others have given these quotes, quote after quote after quote, by people like Richard Gardner, talking about an end run around national sovereignty, eroding it piece by piece, and people like Strobe Talbot, who was a Rhodes Scholar and Bill Clinton's Rhodes Scholar roommate at Oxford back in the late 1960s. And Strobe Talbot is saying that perhaps national sovereignty is not such a great idea after all, and the case for world government is clinched. And so if you piece together all of these statements, you find a pattern. There's a definite pattern there. And Toynbee, as I said, was one of the individuals pursuing Cecil Rhodes' quote, as Rhodes said, quote, scheme to take the government of the whole world, end quote. And his paper, quoted from above, of course, was reprinted in the November 1931 edition of International Affairs. Now, that's the journal of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which is an outgrowth of the semi-secret roundtable groups that were formed between 1908 and 1913, really, to further Cecil Rhodes' plan for an elite to dominate the world. And so what you would do is listen to these discussions, discuss it among your other friends, call up your local talk show hosts in your area, and build upon this. And it can actually be something of considerable interest because, as I said, it's like piecing together a puzzle, and you begin to see the larger picture the further you go into this, and you must warn. That's also part of the Bible's teachings. Ezekiel 33:8. We must be a watchman on the wall, because if we're not, and if we don't warn the people, then that'll be on our head, that God says. And just ask yourself, if you think the country's okay and you're okay and so forth, what do you think God is thinking about a people who listens a lot but then doesn't do much to say end abortion, the 55 or so million abortions, 1.1 or 1.2 million abortions every year? What do you think God thinks about that? It's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee that when the days of trouble come, then America's going to be safe.
Hold that thought, Dennis. Hold that thought. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and Dennis is saying really what I believe very, very sincerely, and that God is very displeased with America. And certainly when we have a program here of doing over 1 million abortions a year, and basically people don't point out this is frankly murder. This is not a matter of opinion. It's not a matter of choice. It's a matter of murder that is being facilitated by our government. Dennis, we're out of time. Parting thought, and I'll let you go.
Well, please follow the Bible's admonition. Be doers, not just hearers of the word, because each of us is going to be held responsible for that.
Amen to that. God bless you, Dennis. We'll look forward to talking again next week. Fascinating program as always, bringing back a lot of remembrance of things past.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, fine. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and basically, of course, we do carry Dr. Cuddy's books, and we have certainly all of those books that are in print, but if you haven't read his book, The Power Elite and The Secret Nazi Plan, The Power Elite, their history and their future. That's 2 books to get started with. And then, of course, we hope you want to get that. We do have certainly a 4-CD set on Oklahoma City. And you need to go back and think about that because, of course, that was a prelude to the bombing, certainly, of the Twin Towers. And all you need to do, we actually have 3 the different sets on that, 9/11, 9/11 update, and why did the buildings come down? And in that last 4-CD set, Why Did the Buildings Come Down? I interviewed the fellow, and his job, he was in charge of the cleaning up of the debris of Building 7, and I asked him, was that certainly a spontaneous collapse, or was that a controlled demolition? And here's a man, this is what he does full time. He says 99% chance controlled demolition. So if the Building 7 was a controlled demolition, then of course the Twin Towers coming down was a controlled demolition. They killed those people. The story we've had of the planes crashing into the buildings is a lie. And all you need to do, ladies and gentlemen, is look at the original pictures of the hole in the side of the building of the Pentagon. It's about 15 feet wide and 18 feet tall. And they want you to believe, well, they tell you that a major airliner disappeared in there. The engines, the wings, the tail, the body, all those bodies, well, of course, we don't know there's any bodies there, but we hear all sorts of stories. But the one thing we do know, and that is that no plane went in there. The other thing is, of course, what happened in Shanksville, where, of course, one of the planes hijacked that day crashed into the ground, just nose down and crashed into the ground. But there's no debris. And you can look at the pictures. There's no debris. How do you crash a plane into the ground without debris? Oh, it suddenly buried itself. Ladies and gentlemen, how gullible do they think we are? Pretty gullible. But you need to be involved because you need to understand we're dealing with powerful demonic forces working at the highest levels of our government. Our telephone number, 1-800-544-8927. 1-800-544-8927. You need to get my book, Brotherhood of Darkness, to really understand what's going on. We've got all sorts of DVDs on what happened on September 11th. Richard Gage's. There's from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth has 2 DVDs we carry. You need to get the information. You need to help us get it out. And now we just got a new supply of Watchers 7. It's a DVD going into what's going on. Lynn Marzulli's excellent DVD about the spiritual forces working behind the scene and the fact that most of what you're being told is not true. Watchers 7 by Lynn Marzulli, L.A. Marzulli, must-watching for anybody who is concerned about what's going on and making preparations for the very difficult period that lies ahead. Our number, 1-800-544-8927. 1-800-544-8927. Our webpage, RadioLiberty.com. RadioLiberty.com, where you can listen to our programs live 4 hours a day. Archived 24 hours a day. You can watch our DVDs. You can read our newsletters. Go to the section on items around the web, and we post something there every day which we think is important for you. And then please pray for America, pray for revival, but pray for Radio Liberty, our provision and our protection.
Can't believe it, Oklahoma, all this hatred fell on you. In the quiet hush of morning rush, evil blasted through Jesus, comfort her. I saw her cry. She was running through the streets, searching for her child. All the lives hurt, all the children, all swept up by design. Sleeping angels in the clouds this night, cradled in his arms. Oh, I saw that child lying limp in his arms, and I saw that man's heart winding down. Now we look for reasons why our hearts will ask, we cannot reply. We are seeing this evil now with the will to kill and eyes that prowl. You think it's quiet for the heartland now? The storm has just begun. In the ruins lies the tears it holds, touched by hands that worked all night. As I watch my heart is torn apart, I see Oklahoma, hold on tight. Oh, I saw that child trembling in fear. She was bloody, burnt and wild, holding on to anyone, holding on to love is best, helping those who are all lost. For we are living this evil still with broken hearts and challenged wills. Justice, stop this hatred, Waco instilled. The beast, he will not win. In the minutes and the days to come, and the years, they will hurt still. I swear I won't forget the suffering here. I know they never will. Jesus, comfort me. I saw Oklahoma cry. She was searching through the ruins still for more lives. Jesus, comfort her. I saw her cry. She was running through the streets, searching for a child.